Within just 72 hours, the San Francisco Bay Area has been shaken by two magnitude 3.7 earthquakes. The latest striking near Pleasant Hill at a depth of 7 miles. From San Francisco to Sacramento, residents felt the ground tremble, leaving many to wonder. The quake originated about 7 miles beneath the surface and was widely felt, with reports spanning from San Francisco to Sacramento, including Concord, Vacaville, and parts of the Northern California Delta region. What's causing this sudden surge in seismic activity? Could these back-to-back quakes be connected? And most importantly, is this a sign of something much larger looming beneath California's iconic landscape? Stay with us as we unravel the mysteries behind these unsettling tremors. This recent earthquake follows another of the same magnitude earlier in the week, which initially occurred along the San Andreas Fault before being slightly downgraded. Unlike the first, this latest quake occurred inland, away from the primary plate boundary but on nearby fault systems such as the Hayward and Calaveras faults, areas known to be highly susceptible to stress transferred from the San Andreas Fault. Recent seismic activity in the San Francisco Bay Area has brought renewed attention to the Hayward Fault, a well-known and highly dangerous fault system capable of producing a catastrophic earthquake. This fault runs through densely populated regions of the East Bay, including Oakland, San Leandro, Hayward, Fremont, Berkeley, and Richmond, placing millions at risk in the event of a major rupture. Despite its potential for devastation, no significant activity has been recorded on the Hayward Fault in recent days. However, recent events reveal a concerning pattern. Following the magnitude 3.7 earthquake near Pleasant Hill, a smaller magnitude 2.1 aftershock occurred approximately 40 minutes later. These tremors are part of a broader trend of seismic activity not limited to the Bay Area. Over the past few months, an uptick in earthquake frequency has been observed across Northern California, from the southern end of the Cascadia subduction zone to the San Andreas Fault and other fault systems in Southern California. The intensity and frequency of seismic activity along the West Coast have been showing a noticeable upward trend in 2024. Southern California experienced an unusually high number of earthquakes measuring above 4.0 in magnitude, marking a significant increase compared to levels observed since the mid-1980s. Similarly, Northern California, particularly the Bay Area, has seen a rise in seismic activity. This region now appears to be the focal point between two areas experiencing heightened tectonic stress, focusing on the Hayward Fault. Scientific data highlights its potential for significant seismic events. According to the United States Geological Survey, USGS, the last major earthquake on this fault occurred in 1868, registering a magnitude of 6.9. Such an event today would likely result in considerable damage due to increased urban development. The Hayward Fault has been accumulating strain at an average rate of approximately 4.6 millimeters per year. However, this value is only about half of its long-term slip rate, suggesting that stress is accumulating rapidly. The fault's recurrence interval, the estimated time between significant earthquakes, is approximately 160 years. In this year, 157 years will have passed since the last major rupture, closely aligning with this average interval. Historical analysis of the past 12 major earthquakes along the fault reveals that the average interval between the 5 most recent events is slightly shorter. These findings emphasize the urgency of preparedness for a potential seismic event in this region, as the fault system appears to be nearing the critical threshold for its next significant rupture. Examining the most recent 5 major seismic events, the average recurrence interval for significant earthquakes along key faults in California shortens to approximately 140 years. With 157 years having passed since the last major event, these intervals have been exceeded, pointing to mounting tectonic stress. California and the broader West Coast stand at a critical juncture, with many fault systems showing signs of being overdue for activity. This includes the southern extent of the Cascadia subduction zone, the San Andreas Fault, and numerous inland systems away from the plate boundary. One of the most closely watched segments is the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault, long predicted to produce a major earthquake of up to magnitude 8.1. This section, spanning from Palm Springs to the Salton Sea, has an infrequent earthquake cycle of roughly 200 to 300 years. The last significant rupture dates back to the Spanish exploration era, around 300 years ago, suggesting it has either reached or surpassed its typical interval. Further north, the San Andreas Fault segment near the Fraser Mountain region and into its central portions also shows signs of strain. The last major earthquake here occurred in 1857, and this segment's average recurrence interval ranges from 100 to 150 years, with nearly 170 years having elapsed. This area is similarly overdue for a significant event. Recent seismic trends reinforce these concerns. California has been experiencing increased earthquake activity both along its coastal faults and inland regions like Nevada. Seismic activity in Nevada, particularly across the Walker Lane region north of Las Vegas, has been notably elevated. This area, which had been relatively quiet in recent years, is now experiencing a significant increase in earthquake frequency. Such a rise is indicative of mounting pressure across the plate boundary. The Garlock Fault shear zone and surrounding regions have been especially active with numerous events over recent months. Notable occurrences include a magnitude 5 earthquake near Bakersfield last year and a series of magnitude 4 events spread across the region. These tremors highlight the strain accumulating along this complex system of faults. The tectonic dynamics of the region reveal a broader story of interaction between the Pacific and North American plates. Along the plate boundary, particularly near the San Andreas Fault, the Pacific plate shifts northwestward while the North American plate generally moves southeast. This motion results in a complex interplay of forces with the plates sliding past one another and accumulating stress over time. This interaction is most evident in localized patterns where seismic strain builds along specific zones, some of which have remained under pressure for centuries. The southern segment of the San Andreas Fault. For example, the San Andreas Fault has not experienced a major rupture for over 300 years. This extended period without significant release of energy underscores the region's potential for a substantial seismic event. Patterns of recent seismic activity along the fault system suggest an escalation in pressure, challenging the notion that earthquakes occur purely at random. Instead, the clustering of events along key fault lines points to broader tectonic trends that are reshaping the landscape. The recent seismic activity near San Francisco, including a magnitude 3.7 earthquake today and a 3.6 event a few days prior, underscores the strain accumulating along the San Andreas Fault. These tremors reflect the ongoing transfer of pressure across the plate boundary, a dynamic process that heightens the potential for larger seismic events as strain continues to build. The probability of a major earthquake in the region grows. Southern California, in particular, remains a focal point of concern. The southern segment of the San Andreas Fault, known for its potential to produce a magnitude 8.0 earthquake, has been ominously quiet for some time. Globally, earthquakes of magnitude 8.0 or higher occur on average about once a year, yet the last such event was recorded in 2021. This year, the gap between these massive quakes has exceeded expectations. While magnitude 9.0 earthquakes are rarer, typically occurring once or twice a century, their devastating potential cannot be ignored. The 2011 Tohoku, Japan earthquake serves as a stark reminder of the catastrophic power these events can unleash. Likewise, the southern segment of the San Andreas Fault has shown signs of increasing stress with recent swarms of shallow crustal earthquakes near the thermal area in California. These localized events suggest heightened strain along this fault, emphasizing the urgency of monitoring this region. While the activity may seem minor now, history and geological patterns suggest that these quieter times are often precursors to more significant seismic events. Elevated seismic activity, such as the clusters of magnitude 3 and 4 earthquakes observed over the past year, marks the most significant uptick in activity since the mid-1980s. This trend should not be underestimated as it highlights the immense forces building beneath the surface. The Parkfield segment of the San Andreas Fault, often referred to as one of the most seismically predictable areas, is overdue for a magnitude 6.0 earthquake. Historically, this segment experiences such events every 20 to 24 years, with the last significant earthquake occurring in 2004. This interval has now been surpassed, signaling an increased likelihood of an impending event. Located just below the creeping section of the fault, the Parkfield segment typically locks up before releasing pent-up energy. This locking process intensifies further south, adding to the strain along the system in Northern California. Seismic activity also continues to rise. A magnitude 3.0 earthquake was recently recorded near the southern end of the Cascadia subduction zone, an area where the Pacific plate meets the Gorda plate. This region is part of a complex tectonic boundary and has long been recognized for its potential to produce massive earthquakes. While smaller quakes like this one may seem minor, they reflect the ongoing shifts in pressures at play beneath the surface. Localized seismic events have also been observed along the Concord and Green Valley faults, part of the intricate network of faults connected to the San Andreas system. A magnitude 3.7 earthquake struck this region recently, underscoring the broader trend of increasing activity. The strain patterns suggest pressure is building unevenly across these interconnected systems, with some areas experiencing heightened stress while others temporarily remain quiet. California as a whole has seen elevated seismic activity over recent months. While many areas have experienced smaller quakes, these events serve as warnings of the larger forces at work. The tectonic strain accumulating across the state is not confined to a single fault but is spread across multiple systems, all of which are overdue for significant movement. Seismic activity can emerge unpredictably across various regions, with certain areas showing clear signs of heightened strain. In the Pacific Northwest, however, the reported data often appears incomplete. Microquakes in Washington and Oregon are frequently underreported, possibly due to gaps in coordination between local seismic agencies and broader networks like the USGS. In contrast, Southern California and Nevada consistently provide detailed data on smaller earthquakes, offering a more comprehensive view of activity in those areas. Recently, a magnitude 5.1 earthquake was detected in East Ethiopia, reflecting a surge in seismic energy in that region. This event, while not yet officially reported by major agencies like the USGS or EMSC, highlights how rapidly some earthquake monitoring platforms can pick up initial signals. Interestingly, at nearly the same moment as the Ethiopian earthquake, seismic activity was recorded in Northern California. Although this simultaneous occurrence could be coincidental, it underscores the interconnected nature of tectonic forces across the globe. Seismic stations in Northern California captured two distinct earthquake signals coinciding with the Ethiopia event, yet these quakes have not been officially logged by the USGS. The lack of formal reporting is perplexing given the clear data recorded at monitoring sites. This discrepancy raises questions about how seismic events are prioritized and reported, particularly when unusual patterns arise. Seismic activity can emerge unpredictably across various regions with certain areas showing clear signs of heightened strain in the Pacific Northwest. However, the reported data often appears incomplete. Microquakes in Washington and Oregon are frequently underreported, possibly due to gaps in coordination between local seismic agencies and broader networks like the USGS. In contrast, Southern California and Nevada consistently provide detailed data on smaller earthquakes, offering a more comprehensive view of activity in those areas. Meanwhile, the 4.8 magnitude earthquake in Ethiopia, now updated to a 4.9 by the USGS, marks another event within the highly active East African Rift System, an area undergoing significant tectonic extension. This earthquake is part of a larger pattern, with over 117 recorded events in the rift boundary zone in recent weeks. The seismic activity here underscores the dynamic nature of a region shaped by the gradual splitting of the African plate. Interestingly, a separate seismic event in the Middle America Trench, a magnitude 6.2 earthquake near Mexico, produced long surface waves detectable across the globe, including at Ethiopian seismograph stations. These low-frequency vibrations illustrate the interconnected nature of Earth's seismic systems, where powerful earthquakes can send ripples thousands of miles away, subtly influencing distant monitoring stations. The ongoing seismic activity in the region suggests the possibility of a significant geological event unfolding, potentially involving a new type or style of volcanic activity. The earthquakes occurring at consistent depths of approximately 6 miles below the surface indicate a stable pattern for now. However, if these events increase in frequency and magnitude, or if their depths begin to shallow, it could signal the onset of a larger-scale event, such as a substantial magma intrusion beneath the area. The affected zone spans about 70 miles in length and includes multiple volcanoes, highlighting that the activity isn't isolated to one specific location but is distributed across a broader rift boundary. This geological feature, characterized by crustal thinning, provides an environment where significant tectonic and magmatic processes can occur. Thinning crust allows magma and other subsurface materials to ascend more readily, potentially leading to notable volcanic or seismic phenomena. The southern end of the Cascadia subduction zone remains a region of particular concern. This area holds the potential for a mid to upper magnitude 8 earthquake, while a rupture along the entire length of the subduction zone could produce an event exceeding magnitude 9. Historical records point to the last full rupture occurring in 1700, but partial ruptures, localized breaks in the fault system, are more frequent and contribute to the stress accumulation observed today. Additionally, activity along the Gorda Ridges and Blanco Fracture Zone adds further pressure to the tectonic framework of Northern California. These movements increase strain on nearby faults and volcanic systems, warranting close monitoring. Complete ruptures of the Cascadia subduction zone typically occur at intervals ranging from 280 to 500 years. However, partial ruptures, which release stress along smaller sections of the fault, could potentially be nearing their recurrence period, given the region's current seismic patterns. Observations over the past year have shown heightened activity along the Gorda Ridges and the Blanco Fracture Zone, areas that have been particularly active in recent years. These movements add considerable strain to the Gorda Plate, which is being subducted beneath the North American Plate at the Cascadia subduction zone, marking the beginning of this tectonically complex region. The entire western coastline of the United States has been experiencing an extended period of tectonic buildup. California, in particular, remains a hotspot of seismic and environmental activity, with fires and frequent earthquakes signaling the region's geological restlessness. A magnitude 6.0 earthquake recently struck, accompanied by a series of aftershocks, including multiple magnitude 4.8 events. This activity, occurring north of another significant seismic event earlier in the same region, suggests a pattern of gradual migration along the fault lines. While the USGS typically reports only earthquakes of magnitude 4.4.5 and above, additional seismic monitoring reveals a more extensive picture. The area has experienced numerous smaller quakes, including magnitude 3 and 4 events, highlighting a level of activity greater than what is publicly acknowledged. This broader data set underscores the need for continued vigilance and monitoring of potential escalation in seismic intensity. Turning to other parts of the world, Iceland's tectonic activity along the Reykjanes Ridge continues, with a recent 3.8 magnitude earthquake hinting at the possibility of future volcanic activity. Similarly, the Mediterranean region has seen moderate seismic events, including a magnitude 4.3 beneath the Black Sea and a 4.2 near Ukraine. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more updates. Stay informed, stay safe, and remember, preparedness is the key to facing the unexpected.